Greetings and welcome to another video, and in this one today we are going to be doing part 3 of my little series of Was the Commodore 64 any good at arcade ports. Now, we've done lots of early years. I know there's plenty of games I've missed out. I think I might do a honourable mentions video when I come to the end of the series, but until then we're moving on to the mid to late 80s, so 85, 86, 87. And you know, there was a number of games that I feel transferred well to the home systems. Now, obviously, as the arcades progressed and the graphics got better and went beyond even what we'd get on 16-bit, obviously the 8-bit computers are going to have a hard time keeping up. So a lot of the games were cut down. But there are a few that I think transferred and play really well, and playability is the main reason that I still like these games. So anyway, we'll crack on and we'll have a look at some. Bobble is a 1986 platformer that was published by Taito. Now, in this game you control Bub and Bob if you play the 2-player version, and they're two dragons that set out to save their girlfriends from a world known as the Cave of Monsters. Now, the story is that Baron von Blubber has kidnapped the brothers Bubby and Bobby, his girlfriends, and turned the brothers into bubble dragons, Bub and Bob, and you have to get through 100 levels in the Cave of Monsters in order to rescue them. So basically, if it's a 1-player game, you control the green dragon. If it's a 2-player game, player 1 controls the green, player 2 controls the blue. And basically you blow bubbles to defeat enemies, and they turn into fruit, because it's a cute game, and cute game stuff turns into fruit. And that just seems to be the way it is. But as far as cute games go, this is a really good one. Really fun game. There's also an element of strategy. You kind of have to learn the levels. I mean, to get through all 100, you sort of do need to know what you're doing a little bit. But it is good fun, good music. I wouldn't say it was nauseatingly cute. I mean, it's a lot better than what came after it, let's put it that way. But yeah, this is the game I had good fun playing, and this is one that transferred really well to a whole host of 8-bit and 16-bit systems. I mean, there's recently been a new version that's been made for the Commodore Amiga, which is not an arcade perfect. Alright, there's a few bits missing, but it's pretty good. But we're talking about the arcade one and the Commodore 64 one. To get through all 100 levels, you know, it's no easy task. I think the furthest I've ever got in this game is level 60 something, but you do get a load of power-ups that you fire out extra bubbles, you know, like a rapid fire. There's level skippers. There's things to give you bonus points so you can get extra lives. Anyway, when you get through to the final level, you face a boss, and this is also one of the first games that come out to feature multiple endings. So if you complete in a single player mode, you get a message telling you that the game has not really ended and you've got to do it with your friend. And if 2 players complete the game, then you get the happy end, in which both the brothers are transformed into their human selves and get their girlfriends back. And I mean, I've never done it myself, but apparently if you get the good ending, you also get a code which allows the game to be played in a faster and more difficult super mode. And apparently after that there's a second happy end, in which the super drunk defeated boss, that is revealed to be the brothers' parents under the control of some outside influence. So there's a lot of thought that went into the story behind this game that no one would really know about. So Bobble on the C64 is a great effort. I think they've done really well You know, you're starting to get a lot smoother graphics in the arcade. And I think they've managed to pull it off admirably. For a single load 8-bit computer game, that is something else. I will say from the outset that the arcade ending is, or the happy ending, is missing from the Commodore 64 version. So if you complete it, you get what is effectively the bad end from the arcade version. So you can still complete it, but it doesn't. You don't get to do the double boss thing. Anyway, yeah, as you can see, it's a nice, colourful game. All the elements are there. I mean, it's never, oh bloody hell, death on level 1. That is really sad. Anyway, all the elements are there that make the game great, and that is really good because that is a massive bonus. You don't often see that on level 1. If I manage to get all of these, then I am looking at getting quite a few extra lives for that, because that's a ridiculous bonus for level 1. There we go. Perfect. 100,000 points and an extra 2 lives. Thank you very much indeed. But yeah, alright, so there are some elements of the arcade missing in this, but it's got the music, which is, it's a really, really well done version of the music, which was done by Peter Clark. And, what can you say? It is Bubble Bobble. It plays like Bubble Bobble. For me, consoles aside, I would say this is the best 8-bit version, because it plays well. The controls are tight. You can move about with, and it feels like the arcade game at home. I was really impressed with this when it first came out. But I've always found that this one is another game that plays really well if you're sitting there with a mate and playing 2 players. I used to have an absolute giggle playing this with a mate of mine, and we literally played it for hours, and I think that's where we got to. It was level 60 something, I'm sure it was. Definitely good fun. Yeah, they've got the look of the creatures right. I mean, all right, I suppose the dragons, they're not as, obviously not going to be as smooth as the arcade ones. They look a little bit different, but not so much as that you don't recognise them. But yeah, a stunning effort. And this one came out in 1987 from Software Creations and Firebird. It's a fine effort. Unlike that, I'm not going to head one of those things. I'm going to get done again here if I ain't careful. There we go. That umbrella's very useful, because now I'm going to zip forward a load of levels. Which is great if you've played the game before, but if you haven't played the game before and you start zipping forward, you're not going to know that those little wizardy things shoot bouldery biscuit looking things at you like that. That looks like another major bottle at the top that's going to give me a load of bonus, and I could have done without bursting that, because that would have been another 100,000 points if I'd have managed to get them all. But yeah, as I say, a really cracking conversion, and considering how things have moved on with arcade games, for this to be as good as it is, I tip my hat to the developers. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Commando came out in 1985 from Capcom, and it's a vertically scrolling shoot 'em up where you take the role of Super Joe. one of these trained commando killers, much in the style of Arnold Schwarzenegger, the one-man army. And basically your mission is to rescue captives and just shoot everything. If it moves, shoot it, basically. You're armed with your gun and you get grenades which you can pick up along the way. And I find this to be, you know, quite a hard game, especially the end of levels, because you get so many men come pouring out, as you will see in a minute, hopefully. It's not impossible, it's just bloody hard, and I am well out of practice, as you can probably tell. So, this game in Japan, and I'm going to try and pronounce it, is Senju no Ukami, which translates as Wolf of the Battlefield. And in Germany it's known as Space Invasion, because they didn't like the violence, so basically the enemy soldiers were replaced with robots, a bit like what they did with Contra Probotector. And yeah, it's just a manic shoot 'em up. And I mean, I didn't even clear level 1. That's how bad it is. But I've made it onto the iScore table, so every cloud, eh? But this is another one of those games that you could hear from a mile away in the arcade. It's one of the recognisable sounds that made up the cacophony of 80s arcades. Let's have a look at the Commodore 64 one. Commando on the Commodore 64 starts quite innocuously with, I think it's Mark Cooksey's version of Living in Video, a pop song that was around at the time. But once the game starts, that's when the music really starts, because it's that man Hubbard again. And what a piece of music this is. A piece of music that he programmed after hearing the arcade one a couple of times in some chip shop, and he programmed it in one night. This come out from Elite Systems in 1985, and to be fair to it, it's a bit of a glitchy mess. It's still a good game. You know, out of all the versions that I've played of Commando back in the day at home, this one was the most playable, but there's a lot of sprite flickering, and it's just glitchy, and 5 of the levels are missing. I think it's only got 3 levels, because Elite insisted that Chris Butler, when he programmed this, basically did it all in one hit, so it wasn't a multi-load. And alright, they're not the longest levels ever, but there's a lot of graphics going on, and to load that all into resident memory, you know, it's a big ask. But there is a new version that we'll look at in another video that came out in, I think it was 2016. The SE arcade version came out, where a lot of the multiplexing was sorted out so the sprites don't flicker, levels were added back in, graphics were touched up. There's a new theme tune which no one's going to use over the Rob Hubbard one, because you've got the option to have both. And we'll talk about that one in a later video. But for now, this is the game that I played back in the 80s. And you know, this has the nostalgia factor. This has the, you know, 14-year-old me sat inside when it was raining and I didn't want to go out on my BMX. So what better way to spend your time than to blow away enemy combatants with guns and grenades. A good fun game, a solid romp, and I think the feel of the game was translated well over to the 64, albeit in shortened form. And I will point out, yes, I know that background is very brown, but the arcade one's brown as well, so it doesn't matter. Right, onwards to level 2. Now, I don't remember what sort of score. Oh, blimey, hit by a pink car. And that's really useful. Run straight away when you start that level, otherwise you get done by the Land Rover. I can't remember what score this got in the magazines at the time, but I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. I remember actually playing this game with my dad on the Spectrum and on the Commodore 64. Yeah, no way I'm going to bat away a rocket from a bazooka. But yeah, a game that is very well noted for its music, and why not? Why not? It's such a classic piece of music. I mean, the things that Rob could do with the SID chip, it's just unbelievable. This is the era where we really started to get the SID chip really coming to life. Let's have a look at them side by side. Now, if I was going to read the kanji there, that actually says Salamander, which basically means sand ghoul's wide snake. It's an example of a taji where Japanese use the phonetic value of a character to fit the game's name so they can write it in kanji, sort of thing. I don't know enough about Japanese to go into it. That's just basically a little bit that I do know. Anyway, Salamander, also known as Life Force in the US, is... well, it's a sequel to Nemesis. Well, until Vulcan Venture come out, really, or you know, Gradius and Gradius 2. And it's a very similar sort of game, although they've changed the weapons up slightly. Instead of picking up token pieces and then choosing your weapons from a list, you kind of pick them up as you go. But it's a really fast-paced shoot 'em up. I actually prefer Salamander to the Gradius series myself. That's not to take away anything from how good the Gradius games are, although hard. Although I'm making this look quite difficult, but then don't I always? This game is the game that inspired Akira Tsunemoto, who worked for Cave and Toaplan, to develop the Danmaku, which is your bullet hell shot patterns that you see in games like the in Toe Project and Donpachi and games like that. But yeah, it's a lovely, colourful shoot 'em up. I'm dead already, so I'll just put my name in and pretty much say that's that. But yeah, it's a great shoot 'em up. I do believe this one also has vertical levels in it as well. So let's see what they did on the 64. Now let's be honest, you could be forgiven for thinking that a machine like the humble Commodore 64 couldn't do a shoot 'em up like Salamander, but it does, and it does it well. Not only has it got a thumping music track from Mark Cooksey, it's the amount of sprites that it's chucking about. I think in terms of quality on the screen, this game is really second only to games like Armalite, which that's not an arcade conversion. They're trying to make this like the arcade game. But I featured this game before in my video about the Commodore 64's colour palette, and this game always amazes me at the amount of colour that it has in it at one time. You reds and blues and greens. There's a lot going on this, and I think it's one of the best arcade shoot 'em up conversions on the 64. It's playable, it's fun, it's not infuriating. Now, as far as I know, all the levels are there. The only thing you can't do is have 4 multiples. You can only have 3. That is a system limitation. And, a system limitation is what it is. There's not much you can do about it. But look at the amount of crap I'm firing out the front of my ship there. I mean, to have all that moving about on the screen, and there's possibly a little bit of slowdown here or there, but it's not much. I mean, when you consider how much the Gradius games slow down on the arcade, I think, you know, this is it's amazing. I mean, I'll take my hat off to Peter Barron and Bob Stevenson for the development work on this, because it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, that bit there slowed down less than the arcade did. But what a great conversion. I would recommend this to anyone to play. If you like a shoot 'em up, this is definitely one worth loading up. It's worth the time spent loading. Absolutely brilliant. Green Beret, known in North America as Rush and Attack, is a 1985 run and gun game from Konami with platforming elements. And I seem to be picking some hard games today, trust me. In this game you are basically armed with just a dagger, and it's pretty much whack people a la Kung Fu Master. And you do get to pick up, as you've been seeing, a flamethrower, which does come in very handy indeed. But this is another one of them games I find difficult, because there seems to be cheap deaths like that at every turn. But fortunately it doesn't send you all the way back to the beginning. There's fairly decent sort of restart points throughout the levels. And the idea is to basically get through the levels. And what you've got is a missile base, a harbour, an air base, and a Siberian prisoner of war camp. And at the end of each stage, you get to face a group of enemies, much like you do in the game Commando. It's like a rush of them. And what you've got to do in this game is infiltrate a Russian military base and save 4 POWs from being executed by a firing squad. That's basically the premise of the game. You've got to watch out for mines on the floor. It is quite difficult. I used to be able to get to level... I definitely used to be able to get to level 2 on both the arcade and the Commodore 64 version, back when I used to play it a lot. But this is another one of those games that I saw early doors when I first got my Commodore 64. So I suppose there's a lot of nostalgia factor. I did actually play the arcade version, I'm pretty sure, in an arcade in Jaywick near Clacton in Essex when I was a teenager. So this is one I did actually play in the wild. Now the Commodore 64 version of Green Beret had something that the arcade didn't have, and that something was Martin Galway. The music on this game is sublime. It uses some jingles from the arcade machine, and they sound better than the arcade one. You've got this stellar loading music, and you've got a really, really good, fairly bass driven title track as well, which I absolutely love. It's one of the pieces of music I remember hearing, when I first got my 64. Now this actually came out in 1985 from, License to Imagine, and I think by that point they were already under the ocean wing, shall we say, or the ocean umbrella. But yeah, it's a fairly difficult game. I mean, they've definitely transferred that across from the arcade. But you know, as you can hear, you know, Martin has really got the sound on pat on this. It is absolutely perfect, and like I said, it's better than the arcade version. And I think of all the versions of this that I played at home, this comes closest to matching the arcade in its gameplay, in its layout, the enemies. I mean, alright, the graphics are a little bit chunkier as you'd expect on a Commodore 64. You know, but it does it well, because look, you die if you jump off there, just like I did in the arcade version. But like the arcade, the restart points seem to be pretty much the same. Got to mind them mines on the floor. And you've got to watch out you don't get shot like that. That is the one, the infuriate. I've just run into a mine and that's the end of that. Oh, that's just fucking typical. Well, yeah, I think we'll leave that one there. But yeah, definitely a really good port of an arcade game. This is definitely one of the better mid-80s ports. Alright, it is difficult, it is infuriating, but it captures the arcade perfectly and just whacks a load of better music onto it. Absolutely great stuff. Makaimura, or as it's better known in the West as Ghosts and Goblins, is a 1985 game from Capcom. And it's fair to say, this is one of the hardest arcade games ever made, in my opinion. Because not only is it absolutely bastard fucking hard to get to the end of this game, when you get there, you have to do it all again. I'm not kidding you. It's literally, well, most of you watch my channel should know that anyway. You literally have to complete it twice. And it is really hard. I mean, just look at these things. They appear out of the ground underneath you, these zombies. There's stuff all over the place. But saying that, it is still fun to play. I don't find this game particularly infuriating. I find it difficult. Yeah, alright, I find it impossible. There's no two ways about it. This game is as hard as nails. I mean, if you accidentally end up picking up the fire weapon, well, you might as well just reset the machine and start again. But anyway, you take on the role of Sir Arthur the Knight, who sees his sweetheart, Princess Guinevere, being kidnapped by the Goblin King, and you've got to run and jump your way through 6 horizontal and 8-way scrolling levels and rescue the princess. And you start off with a lance, but you can pick up axes, swords, daggers, there's a cross, and the aforementioned flaming torches, which aren't worth a wank in my opinion. But very nice graphics. I mean, this is where you're starting to see the arcade games become really colourful. You know, with like, oh, well, that was useful. Really colourful with full on 256 colour displays, and the sound's progressing. You're starting to get a really advanced sound on the games as well. But definitely not a game for the faint-hearted, not because it's set with demons and stuff like that. It's just, it's bloody hard. I mean, the name of the game itself, Makaimura, the Japanese game, translates pretty much as Demon World Village, as far as I know. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, it's not gone well. do like the map. I think that was one of the first games to do that. So I'm already down to my pants here. Let's see how we get on. Them plants that spit out the balls at you are a real pain in the arse. As are these, but I'm not sure what they are. Weird floaty things that throw spears at you. Or as a mate of mine used to call them, sausage rolls. Yeah, we're getting towards the end of level, guardian, boss, whatever you want to call him. Some big meathead that chucked a fireball at me, and that's the end of that. Game over. But quite an iconic game of the time. I think most of the ones that I've included today are, you know, really well-known games from the mid-80s. That I mean, if you're watching this channel and you don't know what these games are, I'll be very, very surprised. But that is Ghosts and Goblins on the arcade. Let's have a look at the Commodore 64 version. That is a really nice title screen, I have to say that. Ghosts and Goblins on the Commodore 64. Just as hard, just as infuriating, and just as you have to play it twice as the arcade one. What this has got is very different music to the arcade version, but it has got an absolutely stunning piece of music by Mark Cooksey. And graphically, this is quite nice. I seem to remember this doing rather well in the review stakes. Now, a lot of the other versions of this were a bit pants, but this has got really nice smooth scrolling. You know, the colours are fairly accurate to the arcade. But it is just as difficult. In fact, truth be told, I think this version's actually harder than the arcade version. Well, alright, not that bit there particularly. But I found the having to press up to jump in this, I found that I mean, I've got so used to having more than one button in life over the years. Having to press up to jump now on a platform game it's a nightmare. Now when I use my actual C64, I've actually got an attachment so I can connect a PlayStation pad, and one of the buttons is mapped to up, so I actually got a jump button. But I'm using Vice to capture this, and that's just giving you the one button. So this is playing it pretty much as was. And well, you can see I am struggling with the jumping. But a really, really nice version of the game. And this is a game that's had an SE makeover in recent years. And much like the Commando one, I will feature that in another video. Oh, that just takes the fucking biscuit. Right, I'm not playing this anymore. It's bad enough you have to go around twice, let alone that happens to you. But yeah, thoroughly good version of the game. It's got all the annoyances of the arcade one, so that to me is a very good port. The bastard. So there you go. That's another 5 arcade ports that I think are pretty good on the Commodore 64. Yeah, when you see the arcade ones, you can see how far the arcade had come on from things like Space Invaders and Moon Patrol. And the fact that they could produce serviceable, you know, reasonably decent looking versions on an 8-bit home computer is, you know, it does say something about the programmers of games. I mean, Chris Butler that did Commando and Ghosts and Goblins, I mean, he went on to do some other arcade ports for Elite, which I will talk about in a future video. But it's amazing that it managed to hold up as well as it did. You know, they're nowhere near as good as the arcade versions, although I think sonically some of them are better. The music on Commando and Green Beret, for example, absolutely pisses all over the arcade music, in my opinion, but then I'm a bit of a SID-aholic. But yeah, absolutely fantastic ports. So that is another video done. And I'm going to play you out this time with the high score music from Commando. It's a lovely, lovely, chilled out Rob Hubbard track. So, until the next time, thank you very much for watching, and laters.